Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests. For my speech, I'd like to take you back to the mid-1960s. I think for most people in this room it seems a long time ago, but I can assure you it's not run pretty quick. I wanted to train as a psychiatric nurse at that time, and it's a 3-year course for registration. I would like to, and have a mind block on the word, I don't know if anyone else has ever had that. I'll share with you my first day on the wards. And before that, I'd like to ask everyone in the room, do they know the Epsom hospitals, the cluster of Epsom hospitals? How many people know? Right, quite a few. Okay, so I'll continue. My first day on the wards, I can remember. These hospitals, I'll just explain these hospitals. They were built in the last century, the early part of the last century, and they were then called asylums. Later on in the century, they called them mental hospitals, and I think they finished up psychiatric hospitals. But they lasted 80 or 90 years as places for the mentally ill to go. My first day, I remember the hospital was so big. West Park where I went, it held 2,000 people, over 2,000 places. And I remember going along the corridors, and I thought, winding corridors and such a long way towards the ward. That was my first day. I was with the nursing officer, and he said to me, well, the ward you're going is for male patients with behavioural problems, and there's over 30 in the ward. And it's locked, the ward is locked. So I thought, well, fair enough, I'll give it a go. And he unlocked the ward and we walked in. And if you see those wards in those days, they were massive. The corridor, all along the corridor, and through the dining room, there's patients sort of milling about everywhere. And we walked down to the charge nurse's office, and he said I was to be introduced. And he said, charge nurse looked at me, and I think he thought I was from school or something. He looked at me, I was 19, so he thought, what use is he? So, but he was quite helpful really. And he said, eventually, put on your white coat. In those days, it was all white coats, and go down to the day room. This is a large sitting room, and to observe and talk to the patients. So I did this. I walked down and started to talk to the patients, and I was like a fish out of water. So difficult, you can't get to know them in one day. They know you're new, everything's new. So, and during the morning, there was a couple of altercations or fights, and I was just a spectator. Although I was young and I was pretty fit, I'll defend myself, but obviously on the first day I can't start fighting, so I just looked on, and their staff, they did what they could. Later on, I always remember this chap come up to me, and he was from Devon, and he was well over 6 foot. He stood over me and he said, she's your daughter, she's your daughter. I thought, my goodness. And he repeated it again, and more threatening, she's your daughter. And I thought, my goodness, what does he mean? I didn't say anything. But apparently he was a paranoid schizophrenic. Obviously he couldn't get out of the ward. He did have a daughter that he couldn't visit, and he was getting all mixed up. He thought it was their daughter, not his. So that was me picked on. Later in the morning, and this is the 1960s, the nursing officer came through, and he said to me, I was sitting there with patients, thinking I'm doing something, talking to them, and he said to me, stand up. Stand up. And I thought, no, before sort of thing, but I stood up and he said, what's your name and all this in front of all the patients. I mean, I've lost all my, you know, whatever I built up for them. He said, don't you know it's nursing etiquette to stand up when the nursing officer comes through? I didn't. So eventually I did stand up and he was happy. Well, I'd got an enemy, I think, for the rest of for a few years anyway. But later on in the morning, I always remember the lunchtime in the dining area. The staff said to me, and they were supportive, they showed me around the ward and things, but they said afterwards we'd count the knives and forks. I thought, well, yeah, we did it, but apparently it wasn't because they're going to use them on you, it was because they might swallow them or harm themselves more so, you know. And the shift came to an end, and I was quite relieved really. And the next day I reported to the office, and the nursing officer who had taken me there, he said, look, I'm sorry, it's bad management. First day in the hospital, we should never take you to that type of ward. What you've got to do is go to the geriatric ward, which is old people. And so I did. I went along to the geriatric ward, and do you know, I've never been so happy to see an old person in the ward.